All right, so now that we've seen what extensions can do, let's use this newfound knowledge to reorganize some of our code. So in our weather view controller, you can see that we've adopted two protocols here, the UI text field delegate as well as the weather manager delegate. So let's try and split out some extensions so that we separate out our code which is dealing with the text field and the code which is dealing with our weather manager. So right at the bottom of our weatherviewcontroller.swift file, outside of our class weatherviewcontroller, so below this curly brace that ends the class, I'm going to add our extension. And this one, of course, has to have the same name as our weather view controller to extend that class. And this extension is going to adopt the UI text field delegate. And inside this block of code, I'm going to move in all of the parts of my code that's relating to my text field, including my IB action search pressed. So I'm going to move all of that code down into here. And because we've got our UI text field delegate adopted here, we can now delete it at the top. All right, so that's one down, one to go. Now, the next extension I'm going to build is going to be adopting the Weather Manager delegate. So let's create another extension for our Weather View controller. And this one is going to adopt the Weather Manager delegate. And then inside here, we're going to move the two Weather Manager delegate methods, the did update weather and the did fail with error. So we're going to cut that out and move it in here. So now we can again delete this one, and we're now just left with a weather view controller that is subclassing the UI view controller, and all the code that's currently in here is now a lot simpler. And when we click over here, you can see we've now got our two extensions with all of the method names listed out and the property names at the top here. And the P stands for the properties that we've got in our weather view controller. So that's pretty neat, but we can make it even better. Notice how at the moment, if we have a large file, we can see that we've got separate extensions, but we can actually separate them out into different sections using something called a mark. So this is a comment and then the word mark in all caps, and then we're going to add a colon and a single dash line. And as soon as I write the dash line, you can see that Xcode has now created this new section for me. And up here, you can see we've now divided our file into two separate sections, before the mark and after the mark. Now, this mark is going to denote the UI text field delegate section. And so now when we check up here, you can see we've got a section called the UI text field delegate, and that includes this extension of Weather View Controller with all of these methods. Now, you've noticed that whenever we start typing, say, a struct or a class, you can see that on the left-hand side here, we've got a little symbol that denotes that this is a code snippet where if we hit enter, it will expand the code with placeholders and the default syntax for creating, say, a class or a struct. Now, we can also create our own code snippets. So for example, you might often want to create these mark comments. So why don't we create code snippet? All we have to do to create a code snippet is to select the part of the code that we want to reuse and then right click on it and go to create code snippet. So now we've got this new code snippet created and we can give it a name. So I'll call it a mark comment. And in the summary, it's just going to say adds a mark comment. And this is the code as it is right now, but I also want to have a placeholder like the ones that you saw in the code snippets. And the placeholder is going to be where I'm going to remind myself to add the name of the section. So in order to create a placeholder, we open a angle bracket and then add a pound sign or a hashtag, you might call it. And then we put the name of our placeholder. So I'm going to call that section heading. And then we close it off with, again, a pound sign and a closing angle bracket. And we've now created our very own placeholder. So now we can go ahead and finally add a completion. So this is the sort of text that you write in order to bring up this code snippet. So I'm going to call that mark and then go ahead and click done. Now that I've got my code snippet, I can either go to the code snippet and then simply just drag it in like so. Alternatively, as you saw earlier on, we created that completion short name. So I can simply start writing mark and go ahead and hit enter when I see my mark comment, and it'll insert that mark comment in there. So in my section heading for this section, I'm going to call Weather Manager Delegate. Now, when I go and look in my file structure, I can see I've got 3 clear sections. The first one is just the class, and then we've got all of our extensions, and we've given each extension a section heading to separate them out. Now, in the next lesson, we're going to be adding the functionality of getting hold of the current location based on the GPS data that the phone has access to. That's yet to come, and I'll see you on the next lesson.